I built this tipping ramp mouse trap last year, and it works really well at catching mice. And I was thinking I could use this with a bucket as a sort of a one-way mouse valve, and then send the mice through a maze, which I'm building right here. Maze is done. Now I just have to screw those little pieces. This maze has got a few false exits to try to tempt the mouse to go the wrong way. The mouse injector device is going to mount on here. I added these little things with holes in them just to make it more interesting. But the mouse overall is probably going to say, screw this, I'm just going to jump over the edge. So I've got this glass cover here, and that will be held on by blocks like this. And here's my computer setup, a Raspberry Pi with a camera module, monitor. Here's the maze. I put peanut butter here and here just to make it more interesting. And I put sawdust in here, which makes it more difficult for the mouse to jump up. Well, in the first week I had it set up, all I had is these creepy shadows, and that turned out to be insects crawling over the lens. I added more fresh peanut butter to the tipping ramp itself, and then also a bunch of bait to the path leading up to it, so that hopefully the mouse would actually find it up there. And I also set up a second camera. This one is mounted on a homemade wooden tripod, and I have 2 computers here and 2 keyboards. With all this technology, all that's missing is a mouse. A real mouse, that is. And finally a mouse scurrying around. Plus, of course, the usual bugs on the lens. And finally I've got a mouse coming up to the trap. And here it goes. Come on! Come on! Haha! I really don't understand why the mouse actually came back into the maze after leaving it. So after that first dumping, something is not quite working right about my trap, or at least it never successfully dumps the mouse again. I was starting to question whether I needed a trap at all to get the mouse into the maze. It seemed to be quite happy to explore it just coming in from the exit. Somehow that mouse wisened up to that trap, but oh, I see, it got stuck on here, and that's why the mouse never got dunked again, because it was always tipped a little bit so the magnet was not effective. And here's one of those creepy crawlers that I keep seeing crawl over the camera lens. I'm not sure if I'll be able to convince the mouse to go for this bait again. I'll put some further back here. I figure if I just put a little bit more bait in here, just to see how the mouse learns to traverse the maze. Now putting the glass back on, and we're ready for round 2. After eating all the peanut butter in a maze, the mouse is finally back on the ramp, and it falls in. I think this time around the problem is that my trap requires too much force, because the mouse ate all the peanut butter off of it, and only when it gets to the very edge of it does it tip off at all. I put a little bit of bait on the bottom of the end of the ramp so that the mouse has to kind of bend over it, and that seems to be what's enough to get the trap to tip. One thing's for sure, the mouse has gotten much more effective at getting out of the maze. And now I'm back again to rebait that trap and also tweak how much force it takes to tip. And I thought while I was at it, maybe smear some bait to the inside of the bucket just to see how the mouse is going to get at it. The mouse has gotten very good at traversing the maze. It is pretty amazing to see how the mouse gets at the peanut butter in the bucket. There's a lot more running around by the mouse beyond this, but nothing really interesting, except for the one time that the mouse kind of came up near the camera to check that out. And after a week I came back to put more peanut butter on the trap, and also on the inside of the bucket because I wanted to see how the mouse would get at it if it's further out of reach. And I also put some sunflower heads inside the maze because I wanted to see what the mouse would do with that. What's interesting with the sunflower seeds is that the mouse keeps munching away at those and then leaves and then comes back and then leaves and comes back and leaves and comes back. And looking at the footage, it's actually usually about a minute expired between the mouse leaving and coming back. It's just that part is skipped in the video. So I think what's happening is the mouse is taking the sunflower seeds and stashing them somewhere else every time. Eventually the mouse had gotten to all the easy to access sunflower seeds and peanut butter, so it was time for the harder stuff. First up, I guess, was the sunflower head in the tiny little cubby.